You know what, Lucas? They've been asking for this one, so I gotta do it to them.
Mrs. Fink, what if we can only find one word that rhymes?
That's right.
Thank you.
What is that character's name again? The Mrs. Fink kid?
So his name is Kenny. I think his name is Kenny. I looked this up the other day. So yeah, his name is Kenny, and I believe he had a second name as well. So I'm on, once again, thanks to the Arthur Wiki. His name is Kenny. He is identified as Bentley Vallinakis on Mr. Ratburn's 4th grade class list. So he's living a double life, it seems.
I would say that. What a fake name. Bentley. What was the last name again?
Vallinakis.
Bentley Vallinakis. That's going to be my new, like, if I ever have to, check into a hotel and I don't want the ECL fans to know it's me, and harass me, I'll be my stage name, Bentley Vallinakis?
Vallinakis.
That's wild.
Yeah, I love that they gave him a Greek last name. There's so many fun things you can do there. Welcome, everybody, to Elwood City Limits, the episodic Arthur podcast. I'm Will Young and my co-host Lucas Mancini. A little bit later than usual this week, but we've got... you know what? I was saying to Lucas off air, I'm actually kind of glad that we're recording when we are, because there's a couple of things to talk about that have happened overnight Thursday into Friday. So, and... I think, first of all, I want to address this out front. I want to do one more thank you to everybody who took the time to nominate and vote for us as part of the Best of Halifax 2021. Unfortunately, we did not place this year, but that's okay. There's some other great new podcasts that have been spotlighted, and it's always fun to get into the spirit of it. And
exactly.
We'll keep trying again, and maybe next year.
Maybe next year. And we know we're the number one podcast in your hearts, and that's what really matters.
Absolutely. And we do have things to celebrate this week besides that, so I don't want it to be doom and gloom or anything like that. As a matter of fact, Lucas, we just hit a couple of milestones on social media. First of all, over 200 likes on Facebook.
Woo!
And over 600 followers on Twitter. We hit our 600 follower mark early this week. So thank you to everybody who has followed us on social media, and that includes our Instagram and our Tumblr as well.
If we had $1 for every Twitter follower, we would be able to buy a PS3 at its original price.
If we could actually get in line,
Yeah, exactly.
So, man, I can't believe, aren't there, statistically speaking, from how much this is sold out, hasn't everybody on Earth gotten a PS5 by now?
Oh, you're talking about the PS5. See, PS3, $599 The PS5, I think the PS5, it's that darned supply chain, Will. I think it's got something to do with, that fancy-dancy supply chain not working the way it's supposed to.
Well, you're right, Lucas. I did mishear you, but whether the 3 or the 5, I don't have either of them. So I just had that on the brain. It's all even numbers for me. 2 and 4. I'm going to shoot for the PlayStation 6.
Speaking of numbers, we got an episode today, but first I think we got some emails, correct? Some letter correspondence.
Well, as a matter of fact, we do, but there's actually a couple more things before the emails that I want to mention. This is the big reason why I'm actually glad that we're recording today. Just received in the mail today is another cache of stickers from Eddie, our patron.
We gotta get to sticker bombing, Will. Thank you, Eddie. That's awesome.
Yeah, Lucas, I still need to deliver you the cache of stickers that Eddie has gotten us. That's awesome, Eddie21, one of our wonderful patrons, who does their own custom stickers, and I'll be making sure to put this up on our social media today, or rather, it will be up there already by the time you're hearing this. And these include stickers for the Frensky Star. These include stickers for this. There's one of just Buster in the classic Buster Baxter piano tamer pose at the end of that episode. And we even got our own. We have a little parking sign that says Elwood City Limits.
I love it. The Elwood City Limits faithful always comes through.
It's awesome. So many of our fans have sent us cool stuff or do cool stuff. And I mean, we appreciate you we appreciate you no matter what, but you got to believe this is really, really cool. Speaking of the Frensky Star, I also wanted to give a shout out to them. We always like to say that they are one of the premier sources of information for Arthur, and they just came out with their own YouTube channel, so you can search up the Frensky Star on YouTube. But they also have a new Splinter channel called PBS Rewind, and their first video is the history of Arthur. It's a great watch. It's about 20-ish minutes long, and it's a great little reminder of where Arthur came from and a look at some of Arthur's biggest episodes. I thought it was great. That's the Arthur history video for PBS Rewind. Check it out on YouTube. And I also wanted to quickly highlight, this was something that we were talking about in the Discord last week, but Screen Rant, one of those websites. I say that because I actually technically kind of used to work for Screen Rant. I worked for the company for which Screen Rant is under the umbrella, and I worked for the sports/wrestling site, The Sportster. So they came out with a piece of content called the Top 10 Arthur Characters. Now, Lucas, it's pretty much who you'd expect, but there were a couple surprises in there. Namely, at number 10 is Bailey. People have been bigging up Bailey for us for a long time, so apparently he's top 10 material, and people in the Discord, when I asked, agree with this summation.
I could see it. I've heard, ruminations about Bailey kind of gets a star-making turn eventually. I don't know if we've quite gotten there yet. He definitely has a fun one-liner every once in a while, but I patiently await the big Bailey episodes that are sure to come.
Me too. And then smack dab in the middle of the list, this is the one I straight up disagreed with, is The Brain? Yeah. Come on.
No. And listen, the evidence against Brain being one of the top 10 characters only continues to abound with this episode that we're watching today. So I don't see Brain I don't see a Brain face turn anytime soon.
Listen, I mean, with these websites, and no disrespect, as I said, I used to work for basically the same website in a different category. Sometimes you just got to get stuff out there, whether you know a lot about it or not. So, and this is, hey, I can't exactly blame them for not obsessively watching Arthur. Not everybody has the time or the inclination to do that. But let's just say I disagree. Now, there are other characters on there that are the placements I may disagree with, but their inclusion is pretty good. So it's another piece of Arthur content out there. Glad that people are still talking about it. And now we can get into the emails. ElwoodCityLimits@gmail.com is where you can send those. We had a couple of very interesting ones as I vocally stalled to open my Word document. We had a couple of pieces of information. Correspondence is the word I'm looking for. Such as from Caleb. Hey, Will, Lucas, and Mike. I first heard the word aglets used in an episode of one of my other favorite cartoons, Justice League Unlimited. Yeah. While trying to resist interrogation by some villains, the superhero The Question says, "The plastic tips at the ends of shoelaces are called aglets. Their true purpose is sinister." Lucas mentioned hearing the word somewhere, and I thought maybe he also saw this episode. So Lucas aglets, the plastic tips at the end of shoelaces. I do actually remember that episode very well. Did you ever watch Justice League Unlimited?
You might be surprised to hear, because I'm not Mr. Superheroes. In fact, I really haven't been a big superhero guy for a while. But I actually quite enjoyed Justice League Unlimited. I guess I think of it more of just as a regular cartoon than as a superhero property, which I know sounds silly to say, but I really like that show, and I really like The Question. But I don't know if that's where I heard the aglets comment from. I think it was a different type of cartoon, like a comedy or something like Fairly Odd Parents, but I can't quite put my finger on, where I learned that factoid about the aglets.
Well, the mystery continues. If you think that you might be able to help Lucas, maybe you can solve a mystery. But excellent reference of Justice League Unlimited. Love that show and love The Question. I'd love to own that on Blu-ray. Maybe that'll be my next thing, since I just got Batman the Animated Series on Blu-ray for cheap as well. quote unquote. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on Brain Gets Hooked. It's my favorite episode of the season, and judging by how much you like the Chronicles of Buster, I think you guys will really enjoy it due to the similar themes and how they both parody something that was popular at the time. Well, Caleb, we're going to find out in about, let's say, half an hour. Thank you for your email. Christine. Hello, Will, Lucas, and Mike. Greetings from the west coast of Canada. In the last episode, I was a bit shocked when you and Lucas seemed to believe that shop class was only an American thing. Well, that got me curious about what technology education looks like in Nova Scotia. I can tell you that in Vancouver, my public high school had a shop class, as well as an outdoor swimming pool and ice rink. Ooh, la-dee-da.
Oh, yeah. There sounds like that coastal elite. That sounds like BC to me. Yeah. With the housing, with the property values out there, I'm sure it did have a swimming pool and an ice rink. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking, Kayla.
Christine, little rich girl over here. In fact, I think some kid at my school ended up building a pretty sweet canoe. Do you guys have a favorite project or thing you made in class? I will say
I should have said it's shop classes only in America and very well-to-do have provinces as opposed to a little have-not province like Nova Scotia. No, I joke. We did have tech ed here, but nobody was building canoes, that's for sure.
No. And really, the things that I built, so to speak, were in a class called Family Studies, which would be home economics in the United States or maybe Toronto or something. But yeah, it was called Family Studies, and that's where you would learn how to cook recipes and how to make and how to like sew stuff. And I actually sewed a pretty darn functional pair of pajama pants that I wore for a couple of years, and I'm very proud of it. It was really difficult at the time, and I'm sure it would be difficult for me now, but I did it, and they worked out really well, and they were very comfy, and I enjoyed wearing them. So I look back at the pair of pants from Family Studies very fondly. What about you, Lucas? Did you have no standout the projects you made with your own too?
Not really. I mean, in our tech ed class in school, because I did take some sort of tech, we made like circuits, like, do you know what I'm talking about, with like diodes and stuff? Yeah. Like,
sure.
And it never got more complicated than that. I'm not much of a handyman, to be perfectly honest with you. Back in like Cub Scouts, I made like those little wooden cars that they race, but that's very extracurricular.
Okay, and the email continues. Being around heavy machinery made me very anxious, so I didn't participate as much as I probably should, but I am definitely a proponent for tech ed as a gateway to get young people interested in the trades. I personally believe we need fewer influencers and more welders. That's
what about
Christine.
A welding influencer? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, really. I mean, depending on where you go on TikTok, you can find a lot of people who do a lot of trade stuff as influencers, so they are not as disparate as you might think. Our last one is from Irene, checking in from perpetually sunny Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So from all the way across the globe. I'm a United Stateser from the Twin Cities, Minnesota, who has resettled here for the time being. Having lived in such close proximity to Canada most of my life, it's scandalous that I've never been to your country, hopefully in the future. I've been happily working through the back catalog of Elwood City Limits for several months now. I'm closely approaching the present time and most recent episodes. It keeps me good company while I force myself to exercise on the treadmill. Did you know that the invention of the treadmill can be traced back to what originally was a torture apparatus for prisoners, or while doing chores? I was listening recently when some small children, not English speakers, asked me if I was listening to the news. I said, yes, that's right, the news. So, Lucas, our radio-ready voices are still recognizable today. Very professional.
True. Yeah, it's now listen here. You should have told those kids the real Arthur News. That's the Frensky Star.
Yes, well, and who knows? We might have been doing some secondary reporting.
True.
In a way,
the Frensky Star is our Associated Press.
Is Elwood City Limits news? Impossible to say one way or the other. The Irene continues. Like many of us, I grew up on Arthur in the 90s, most familiar with seasons 1 to 4. It was on after school in the liminal space of getting home and eating dinner, and Arthur in the game kept me company. DW especially speaks to me deeply. I would go so far as to say she's one of the legendary characters of our generation. Who needs you? I've got plenty of ice from Arthur's New Year's Eve is my motto because I love to eat ice cubes. And Irene goes on to say, It's the craving of eating ice cubes, what those in the biz call pagophagia, can be a symptom of an iron deficiency, and my iron tends to be a little bit low. And as DW would say, boy, that's brisk. Something has been gnawing at me ever since, all the way back to the episode with Dino Police. I believe that episode's called Dino Crime. I think that's a single-digit episode. That's how far back that is. In which Lucas got so up in arms about how cartoons exaggerate the likelihood of finding fossils. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, Lucas, that you specifically meant dinosaur fossils, which are quite hard to find, but I would like to share with you that I have had great success in finding fossils both in Saudi and Minnesota. They are always marine types, shells and snails and all that, which are known to be the most commonly found fossil, but you should know that it's not as difficult as you think. You just need patience and a place where there is or once was water. I found my first fossil out in the Saudi desert. So don't underestimate the chances of stumbling on a fossil, Lucas. You too may find one if you stare at the ground long enough. Well, there you go, Lucas.
I guess I've been... this is like I've been double lied to my whole life, because at first I thought I was lied to that you'd be tripping over fossils all the time, and now it turns out that sentiment was a lie, because apparently you can be tripping over fossils. I don't know. I need them to send me an email with the guide of how to do this, because I just lack the patience involved, but I don't think I've ever seen a fossil out in the wild in my life. What about you, Will?
No, can't say I have either, although I don't know if we're in the best part of the world for it, so that's probably a point against us as well. Calling back to the Vomitrocious episode, Lucas had the idea about creating a black metal style t-shirt with the word Vomitrocious emblazoned on it, and Irene sent us kind of a mock-up of what it could look like. Not a bad idea, Irene. Lucas, I'll forward that to you. Another one for you, Lucas. She's got a lot to say to you. Next time you vacation stateside, come on over to the Minneapolis/St. Paul area, even for just a few days. There's a famous local steakhouse called Mancini's that actually has your name on it.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if I'm related distantly. I would love to visit the beautiful Twin Cities someday.
Me too. Yeah, it's always. I'd love to see the Red Letter Media offices while I'm in Minnesota. Random.
Go see a Milwaukee Bucks game.
Yeah.
Milk City, as they say, Will.
Oh, Milk City. I'd love to visit Milk City.
Cream City.
Whoa. Okay, that's all right. That's way different. Oh dear. Random. The word Yarmish in Arabic sounds like voice actor Michael Yarmish's surname means to blink. The more you know. Pick and choose what you want to read. Cheers to you both for keeping a girl company out here. Looking forward to upcoming episodes. All the way from Saudi Arabia. Wonderful to receive correspondence from Irene and from everybody at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. Thanks a lot. All right, one last stop before we get into the Arthur episode. Of course, we want to thank our patrons. We want to thank our newer patrons who have just signed up just recently, including Infra90, Howl Pendragon, and Larry Bridget. Larry, please let me know if I mispronounced that. We also have some lovely patrons who have been around the block a time or two, such as Lauren Rodriguez, Charlie Heckman, Iman Salehian, Emmy the Ghost, JHC, Hannah Kitten, Lawrence, Owen. I go to the second page now. All right, took a little longer. Lily W., William, and Christine Wong, and Dan Big Challenges Silva, of course. Thank you, everybody, for being our patron at patreon.com/ElwoodCityLimits. Our recent episode of For the Kids, a PBS Kids podcast, was a hoot and a holler. It was Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? We had a lot of fun talking about this. So I would recommend.
If you want to know where she is, there's only one way to find out, and that's to subscribe to the Patreon.
Yes, and Lucas is not... He tells no lie. Seriously, if you want to know where Carmen Sandiego is, that episode, we do reveal it. All right. So Arthur is the main character in this episode we're talking about here. Can you believe it? Like, now that I think about it, when's the last time we got an Arthur's blank? You know? I was going through some of the older episodes recently, and it's like Arthur's this, Arthur and the this, Arthur and the proper noun, and it feels like we've gotten away from that a little bit, which is fine. We've got a big cast to work with, but now we're back to Arthur's blank, Arthur's number nightmare.
Yeah, we've been getting away from Arthur owning things, but do you know what we've been getting into, Will? And that's numerology. What are your angel numbers? Are we talking about 777? Are we talking about 666? Oh no, stay back. Rethink your decisions. 444.
Well, I can tell you that the number 7 has always meant quite a lot to me in my life. But whether that's angel, man, I haven't heard angel numbers in a long time. I don't think I am even really sure what that means.
So like I don't know much about this either, but like people, there's like a thing where it's like numerology where it's like if you see like certain numbers, it means certain things or what have you. And I know that like 666, though it's most famously associated with like Satanism and stuff like that. What 666 means in like numerology is like reconsider your decisions, like turn back. And I used to commute into work and I would pick up a Tim Hortons breakfast sandwich with a medium black coffee and a hash brown every day. And that would make out to about $6.66. And I'm so bird-brained and stupid that like every time I would come up to the window, I'd be like, uh-oh, is something bad gonna happen to me today? And then I'd be like, oh no, it's just like I picked this stuff to buy and it's like always this price.
Humans are pretty superstitious, and I can admit that about myself sometimes too. But numbers, well, you know what? For a few years ago, this was actually fairly recent. I used to get very in my own head about the crows thing, like the number of crows that show up, like, you know, one for sorrow, two for. I feel like I've talked about this on the podcast before, so apologies if I'm retreading this. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, and 4 for a boy. That's with how many crows show up. Oh. So I used to like, whenever I'd see a crow, I would look around and be like, okay, what does this mean? And now I thankfully have gotten to the point where I can be like, it doesn't mean anything. They're just crows.
I won't leave my TV on 13 volume still. And
really?
and sometimes I feel like more than once I've been like, you know what, 13 would be the perfect volume though. 14's a little too loud on this TV and 12 is just simply too quiet. I wish I could turn it to 13, but I refuse to. I don't want to, anger the spirits or what have you.
But you're denying yourself. You're denying yourself that perfect volume.
That audio experience.
So yes, Arthur's not so much into numerology, but he's wondering, what's the big deal with numbers anyway? Why is it so important to be number 1? Can't anything be what it is? Why do we need to assign numbers to things?
And then we get this is quite the unique intro. Arthur is lamenting, like, why are we so, focused and fixated on numbers? And then he walks outside and is like, he's in the metaverse or something, because there's this, like, ARG of, like, all these numbers showing up outside and a voice talking about, like, all these different numbers, like, identifying the year and make and model of a car across the street, telling him what time it is. The biggest revelation here is we know exactly how much the Reed's house was purchased for, which,
yes,
let me tell you something, Will. I assume the Reeds bought their house way before Arthur and his sister was born, and that would probably be in the early 90s, so that actually kind of would have been a pretty penny for that house at that time. But nowadays, what a deal. Oh my god.
$237,000 is what Lucas is referring to.
$237. I would love to buy a house for $237,000.
Especially a house in Halifax.
Yes, you kidding me? Not even just Halifax, Will. Like on Dartmouth side, this is going to make no sense to any of the listeners, but even if we get like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, a half hour outside of town, a house for that amount of money, woo, that's pretty good. Especially if it's as nice as Arthur's parents' house, double decker with the garage and a yard.
It's a pretty classic house. We're trying to put our case in for Best of Halifax 2022. So we need to always keep things local.
Keep that local content.
Yeah, so as Lucas said, Arthur is kind of seeing numbers everywhere. It's like DW says that she's number 1 when she wins Confuse the Goose. Dad Reed apparently weighs 185 pounds.
All kinds of revelations in this episode. Add all this info to the wiki.
And Mom's bank card number. So she pretty much doxes herself.
Yeah, it's like, I'm surprised they didn't have like, and her sin is.
And yes, Arthur sees numbers everywhere. I also want to shout out here, so DW does a little victory dance when she wins. I really liked the animation on the victory dance. I know we've been kind of down on the animation in the recent seasons, but I think this looked really good here. I think it looked really fluid and it was very pleasing to look at. So the actual episode has to do with the discovery of a list. We see Mr. Haney in his office. One of his Papers gets blown all the way outside to Buster. He discovers a list of all the kids in Mr. Ratburn's class with numbers assigned to them, with number 1 mysteriously illegible.
Lots of good Mr. Haney stuff in this episode. As the list is blowing out, Mr. Haney is on like a call from like a telemarketer telling him that he won a cruise to Fiji. And Mr. Haney is such a rube. He's like, I might be eligible for a cruise to Fiji. Why, yes, I am interested.
Well, later on, he's continuing to research cruises as well, like discount cruises. So he's been sold on the idea. We discover through the list that Francine is at the bottom, all the way at number 24, and Arthur is number 2. And Arthur, Buster, Francine immediately assume that this is some kind of ranking based on grades or behavior or performance or some such. Speaking of Mr. Haney, Lucas, in that phone call, we get confirmation Mr. Haney's first name is Francis.
I know.
Mr. Francis Haney.
The revelations don't stop in this episode.
No, you're right. This has swiftly become a load-bearing episode based on how much lore is being added by the truckload. And Buster is pleased that he's number 11. He says, I'm 11. It's 1 with a twin. But and this is where your numerology comes in, Lucas. Yes. Buster begins to see 11 wherever he goes. This quickly becomes the number 23, which would have actually been fairly recent. I wonder if they were inspired by that. There's a quick montage where Buster sees the number 11 everywhere he goes. There was a sick bass and sax groove on this scene I really liked.
Yeah, every once in a while. I'm noticing the new music cues more this season.
Yeah. Every once in a while, they bust out something brand new, and it usually sounds really good. And it's noticeable because, of course, with some of these music cues, we've been hearing them for, like, decades. So Francine, obviously very upset by the fact that she is the bottom of the list. So she goes to see Mr. Haney, and she has this imagination where she imagines that Mr. Haney is somehow this, like, completely the opposite of everything we've ever seen him to be. He's like this hyper-competent disciplinarian with this long chalkboard, and he is like this strict adherer to the rules of what he calls ECOSAM, or the Elwood City Official Student Assessment Manual, which has all of these arcane and strange rules that determine class ranking. For example, Francine coming into his office without an appointment, well, that'll take you -5 points down to number 29.
He's like obsessed with quantifying every student's performance, and this sequence is one of my highlights of the episode because not only is Mr. Haney acting out of character, like the way his office looks is different. Like it's peppered with Post-it notes, like from floor to ceiling all over the office, and when you pause it and like try to read what's on the notes, it's literally just random numbers, like a Post-it note with 9, 10, 13, and it's like, what do the numbers all mean? Like Mr. Haney just is like spending the day mulling over these numbers. There's Post-it notes on his lamp.
Yeah, and it's it gave me, I mean, I hate to put this back to Harry Potter, it gave me very like Dumbledore vibes, or maybe Snape would be more appropriate, of just this very strict character. It's also really cool to hear Mr. Haney's voice actor. Like, he's normally very like hapless and much light. This is Haney at his most severe, and I find it very interesting to listen to. In this fantasy, Francine gets assigned to Gum Patrol for being so far down on the list, which is scraping the gum off the bottom of desks. Meanwhile, Arthur is high on the hog. He's imagining himself as like he's not number 1, but he is number 2. They have a pop geography quiz where speaking of Carmen Sandiego, I would be absolutely sunk in this quiz because you have to name the capitals of Europe on like a blank map. Mm-hmm. And yeah, no, I would be done, dude. But Buster kind of gasses him up. He's like, don't worry, you're number 2. You got this. And I was like, yeah. And he's starting to get that beloved. One of the things I love about Arthur's character is this beautiful and horrible confidence that he gets. Whenever he gets a little bit of confidence in his life, he just becomes like measurably a worse person.
It's true. Arthur, we always talk about how much depth a character like Binky has. But Arthur has quite a bit of depth to him too, in that he tends to be one of the more empathetic characters, and I don't mean like you empathize with him. I mean he's very empathetic towards others. Like he cares about his friends. I think he's got a good heart. But it's true. All he needs is a little bit of confidence, and he goes from thinking everyone thinks he's a baby to being just kind of like completely like narcissistic, and he thinks that like he literally is the main character, but he gets this main character energy that's really funny.
Yeah, it's like the main character realizes he's the main character and just devolves from there. It happens every time. I love it. Like he imagines himself on what they call the Titan 12 spaceship, and he's going out to be in space because he is number 2. There's a great quote as we're seeing Arthur go out with like the science officer and like the main astronauts, and over the loudspeaker, it's, as we all know, the number 1 ranked student, whose name I forget, came down with the chicken pox. So Arthur, number 2, is going into space. It reminded me of a Simpsons joke in a way. It reminds me of when Homer has a dream about when he invents like the perfect invention that will take him, that will like make him tons of money and take away his problems. And he's just like, let me see the thing. And the guy's like, why would you need to see it? You invented the product in question. So again, great writing there. Brain eventually finds out about the list. He's not convinced that it means anything grade average. It's really Arthur, Francine, and Buster who are putting any stock into this. Francine is still obsessed with figuring out why she's number 24 and why she's ranked last. Muffy says, Lucas, get this. Muffy says, you're so class conscious.
I wrote this down as well because, yeah, Francine's really like worried about this class ranking, and the joke is Muffy says, you're so class conscious. Which is not, if you had that on your bingo card, bravo, Muffy saying you're so class conscious. That's crazy.
Just to even hear, that combination of words come out of that character, even though it's not at all what it means, is wild. It blew my hair back for a moment.
Next, Muffy's going to be talking about praxis and the dialectic and stuff like that.
I don't know, dude. Maybe in the later seasons, we don't know how far they go. Maybe that's what they do. So Francine is trying to find out more about the list. She kind of sort of breaks into Mr. Haney's office, but she's kind of sucking up to him. She wants to be a part of this fall festival, and hopefully that will increase her standing. So she's going to give a speech at this fall festival. She also tries to find the list in Mr. Haney's office. He conveniently has like a bowl of grapes that he's eating from, and Francine accidentally upsets them and then has to basically eat a bunch of them to hide the fact that she spilled his grapes and was looking on his desk. And
funny screen cap here. If you pause right as she's like trying to stuff her face with these grapes, it looks like she's eating out of Mr. Haney's garbage, and that's like the shot we get that's supposedly from Mr. Haney's view as he walks back at his office as he sees the Francine on her knees like next to his garbage, just like munching.
I totally missed that. I'm going to go back and make sure that I screen cap that. So because Francine's mouth is full, she can't object to Mr. Haney telling her to wear this hideous pumpkin costume, and it's like literally it's wider than Francine, and she has to wear it with the little pumpkin hat coming out of it. It's very ugly looking. So she has to give this speech at the fall fair or whatever it is, and in this pumpkin costume. She originally wanted to be Corn, but Mr. Haney said that Corn's too summery, apparently. Buster's still obsessed with the number 11. He even says, should I change my name to Maximilian? It has 11 letters in it.
He's like making sure Buster really do be giving me. I joked about angel numbers and numerology earlier, but as this episode goes along, Buster becomes more and more obsessed with the number 11. And to the point where he's like putting like 11 cherry tomatoes on his plate, and he's like, I have to do 11 of everything.
Right, and it's, you know what, if anybody was going to represent that part of numbers, it's definitely Buster. So I am always what'll happen, that kind of thing. And it becomes eventually revealed as these coalesce together. Mr. Haney almost absentmindedly reveals that the list itself is a seating arrangement. In fact, he has a list of a seating arrangement for the fall fair, and that's how we end the episode. Is Mr. Haney going, okay, Arthur will be number 2 over here, and Buster will be number 5 over here. So Wah wah. It was never a power ranking to begin with.
Which I guessed, by the way, when they first revealed that list, and all the kids were kind of trying to figure out what the list was, I was like, there's no way that this is like an actual ranked list. I assume this is like a seating chart or something. And lo and behold, I'm smarter than the children's show.
That should be like our subtitle. I'm smarter than the children's show. This was a surprise to me because we watched both these episodes. There are official uploads on the PBS Kids YouTube channel. Very rare, and that they would have both ends of an episode officially uploaded. And I was also surprised to find that at the end of this story, and now a word from us kids.
I know. I mean, I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to talk about this. Usually, folks, I'm going to part the curtain a little bit here. We sometimes, don't tell PBS, watch these episodes via unscrupulous means, you know? Whether that be some seedy websites or some other way. Think of all the ways. Put your imagination to work and think about all the ways you could possibly watch an Arthur episode. This is why we don't talk about a word from us kids every time. And it was very convenient and nice, one, to watch this episode in HD quality on YouTube from the official channel. And two was very surprised. This episode was uploaded September 3rd, 2021. So this was uploaded to YouTube but like 2 months ago. And they still got the retro word from us kids from the 90s. Or from the early 2000s rather. So the SD 4x3 words from us kids. So that was a delightful surprise.
I totally missed the upload date. It's like we were meant to have it, dude.
Also, for only being up for 3 months, a lot of people have been watching this app, 60,000 views? That's crazy.
Wow. So this one very much feels like a classic word from us kids. It's about a young, let's say third grade class, creating priority lists of what is important to them and how they go about their day after school. And what's the order of operations in which they do things. Couple of great answers in here. For example, the whole exercise has the kids creating priority lists, and then another kid comes in and like critiques the order in which they do things, which I'm not exactly sure what the value in that is, but okay. One of them has a girl saying that she takes a shower when she comes home and then she does her homework. Another one says, why do you take a shower before you do your homework? So I don't get my homework dirty.
I was going to say, that's a big brain tech right there. That's some galaxy brain stuff. Whenever I do work, in weird hours, I was always getting everything dirty. Now I know, take a shower first. Because, I'm a regular pig pen over here.
I mean, I'm gonna say, if you say so, unless you're like trotting through the mud or something, I wouldn't think that's necessary. But okay, it is your life. I'm not one to necessarily criticize these priority lists. Everybody has different priorities. For example, there's another girl who feeds bugs, which everybody was kind of confused by a little bit. Just like, wait, you feed bugs? Like, yeah, I've got a bunch of bugs that I feed. And it's just like, all right. We got a bug feeder over here. Anyway,
there was another really cute segment where one girl is telling a guy that he should shower before he goes to basketball practice because that way he'll look extra handsome.
Yeah, she said handsome. I was a little surprised by that, and they all kind of had a good giggle about that one. Yeah, it very much felt like one of the classic versions of a word from us kids that we would have seen in like the first couple of seasons. All right, we will be talking about the second part of this episode right after this.
Hey everybody, it's Lucas from the Elwood City Limits podcast, and if you love ECL, there's a couple of ways to keep up with us. You could go to facebook.com/Elwood City Limits, at ECL Podcast, that's our Twitter. We take questions on Tumblr. It's elwoodcitylimits.tumblr.com. There is an Instagram as well, Elwood City Limits on Instagram. Of course, if you want to donate to the show and get exclusive content, whether that's our full-length commentary of the Arthur movies, our brand new new bi-weekly PBS Kids review show, as well as our video game movie reviews with the Sonic movie review and Pikachu movie review. You can check out patreon.com/Elwood City Limits. And that's also going to get you access to the Elwood City Limits Discord, which me and Will like to post it from time to time. And if you want that sweet, sweet Elwood City Limits merch, check out teespring.com/stores/Elwood-City-Limits-store. You can listen to the podcast at libsyn.com/Elwood City Limits, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and there's other podcast apps like Stitcher, and if we're not on your favorite app, let us know. And where can you let us know? Well, that's going to be at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. That's also where you can send us a question, and we'll read it on the show. Finally, if you want to support the podcast, the best way to do so is to tell a friend who likes animation or Arthur or just podcasts in general, and to go to our iTunes page and rate us out of 5 stars. Apparently, that helps podcasts out. Bye, everybody!
Okay. Brain gets hooked. Sorry, don't mean to sound completely unenthused by this, but yeah, it's a Brain episode. And if you've been listening for the last little bit, you'll know that the Brain is not exactly our favorite character.
It didn't start that way. First 3 seasons, I got no problems with the Brain. He was a smart guy that everybody went to for advice. Alan, there's some great Brain episodes in there. But lately, they've kind of lost the plot a little bit. The sheldification of Brain has really completed here, and he's kind of morphed into something else, something a little bit more sinister.
Yeah, it really does come down to the fact that Brain, yeah, Lucas, you often compare him unfavorably to Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. It is very much becoming the fact that he seems to exist to be kind of a killjoy, because I mean, that wasn't always his character. I think he always had that aspect in him, but it was never always the focus. He was usually up for a good time, but this time he seems like a bit of a drip, honestly.
Yes, he's perpetually morphed into Neil deGrasse Tyson tweets about how the thing that you saw in that movie could have never actually happened because of science.
Nobody really wants to hang out around that. That's not really cool anymore. Anyway, Arthur is doing the cold open here. He talks about people getting obsessed with things while himself obsessing over popping bubble wrap, which I think there's quite a few people out there, myself included, who can relate to that. Certainly, you get me a piece of bubble wrap, and I'm going to want to pop that sucker.
One of the examples he gives is the time his dad got obsessed with decorating for Christmas Mr. Molina. And I almost wish we got a full episode out of this, because this little segment of Arthur's dad, kind of Christmas with the Crank styles, really going all in on the decorations, and then they take down the city power grid because they've hooked up so much stuff. I would like to see more from that.
Yeah, it's a nice little taste of the relationship that Dad Reed and Mr. Molina have with each other. Very interesting. And we also saw another one where Buster is clandestinely listening to Greeb's games on like a little portable radio because he felt that if he didn't, then they would lose. So he was doing his best to support them. The actual episode has to do with, of course, Brain getting hooked on... So I knew Brain got hooked on something, but I never would have guessed it to be this. Lucas, would you believe that at the time where Brain is watching a show called Junior Island, I'm rewatching Lost?
No.
Yes.
Where are you in Lost?
Season 3.
That's so funny.
I howled when this came up. It was just like Brain's getting ready to go to a chess tournament, and he turns on the TV, and it's a show he's never seen before, and he does a lot of cinema sinsing but he slowly starts to get into it. Like I said, it's a show called Junior Island. It is a Lost parody, and
Lost for Kids.
I hooted and hollered in my own home. Yes, Lost for Kids.
This is really funny because wasn't in the episode where Buster was obsessed with the fake Lord of the Rings, you were also doing your big Lord of the Rings rewatch?
Yeah. You're 100% right. It's so strange. Like, I don't know what's going to happen next. Like, this is kind of weird. I recently got the first 5 seasons of True Blood on Blu-ray for free. So maybe next week, I don't know, Sue Ellen's going to be getting into I wish I had a good parody name for True Blood. Like, I don't know, but the Arthur version of True Blood. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, Junior Island. I'm trying to describe it essentially and how I knew it was lost because this game.
I knew it was lost. Like, so the first thing we see of Junior Island is the 2 kids trying to figure out the code for pi in this like kind of like research facility, and nothing about it really reads as lost. But it's when the kids come out of the facility, they like run out and they see a walrus in the jungle, and one of the kids remarks that there's never been walruses in the jungle, and I was like, oh, this is like the polar bear from Lost.
Well, and also I think that it's a reference to the hatch. Like they're in a hatch-like place, and they're trying to get out. And the idea is that Junior Island is apparently it seems to have like new episodes every day or something. There's a lot of episodes going on. It seems to be mimicking the fact that Lost, of course, back in the late 2000s was a very bingeable show, and everybody got obsessed with finding out the answers, which is where Brain starts to stick with it. There's a montage of him talking to everybody about Junior Island and saying, like, isn't this dumb? They're doing this and that. And then he starts to figure out, like, wait a minute, maybe this is why they're on the island. Maybe this is how they get off the island. And that is, as somebody who had friends, who has friends, I should say, who I do have friends, but I had friends in high school who were this level of obsessed with Lost. They were going onto Lostpedia, they were going onto forums, they were, rewatching episodes that they would have taped. It was really hard to rewatch episodes as they aired because there wasn't really TiVo or recording onto your cable box or anything. You had to tape the episodes. And so they were just trying to find every ounce of information. So it brought up some really interesting memories for me. I was never that. I always kind of just watched it as it aired. But it's especially strange, Lucas, as you said. I'm back in season 3, and thankfully, binging Lost is taking away. It's a much different experience because I'm so used to seeing it one episode a week and then several months in between seasons. But now I'm just like, okay, next episode. And it's holding up in some ways, and in other ways, not so much. So I loved this.
I think Brain will agree with you because, and this is actually the episode playing to Brain's strengths, like, we always complain that he's kind of a party pooper. And he's initially very critical of Junior Island, but that's as he's becoming more and more obsessed with it. And there's some really funny lines of dialogue. Like, I think Braid literally says out loud, I just want to watch this absurd show for a few more minutes. And I think later on he describes it as inane, like this inane show. Yeah. When he's telling all of his friends about it, and it's like obvious he's already become obsessed with it, but he's not quite willing to admit that he likes it earnestly, and he's like still insulting it. I thought all of that was really well done and funny.
Well, and I mean, we can sometimes get trapped in that. I'll be honest with you. That's how I started watching Midnight Mass on Netflix. I was like, all right, I'm just going to watch one more episode of this dumb show. And then by the end of it, I'm like in tears at how good it is. So sometimes that can sneak up on you, and you have to be willing to be wrong about this sometimes. I will also give Brain credit. So as he's talking about his various nitpicks with different people, he is talking about it with Francine, and he mentions that like one of the girl character is for some reason stronger than the boys. And Francine's like, that's not hard to believe. Like, a girl could be stronger than boys. And Brain's like, yeah, you're right. Actually, that's not what I have a problem with. So, good. I'm glad that he walked that one back of all the ones. Brain kind of sucks, but he doesn't suck in that way. So, thank you very much. The main struggle here is that Brain is so obsessed with the show. He is trying to write a report on the Magna Carta, but is still obsessed with Junior Island. We also find out that Fern also really likes the show. She eventually finds out that Brain is really into it, and she seems to like it for the mystery. She's like me. I was watching Lost for the mystery and finding out where everything was going to go and how it was going to unravel. Whereas Brain is somebody who would be going on to Junior Islandpedia and figuring out like, okay, but the numbers were also in this episode, but maybe they show up here. Well, walruses, they're native to this part of the world, so maybe they're here.
Meanwhile, I was just watching for, who's she going to date? Is it going to be Jack? Is it going to be Sawyer? Freckles, that's what I was there for. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of that right now. I am not here for that. I have to say. So, in the background to this is a minor thing because this is the presentation is part of this report that everybody has to give. Binky very enthusiastically signs up to do a report about swords and armor, and he actually creates his own homemade armor. It's like full knight armor and like a wooden sword. It's actually really cool, and it shows that Binky's like putting a lot of work into this versus Brain, who has gone so far as to create a map of the show based on what he's seen, and he can't help thinking of ways that they could escape the island. But of course, he gives a very lackluster report on the Magna Carta because he didn't really do his research. He just kind of got by on his smarts, and he gets a bad grade, and Ratburn gives him a couple of days grace to do a better report. So now he's really trying to kick the habit. Fern says to him, never watch more than one episode a day and stay away from the DVD box set. Brain, yeah, like I said, trying to kick his habit. He gives a key. So he does this clandestine system where it's like he locks the remote, the TV remote, by the way. It's like, okay, you could lock the DVD in there or something. He locks it in a cabinet. He locks the key to the cabinet in a different cabinet, and he gives that key to Buster. Because Buster's like, I lose keys all the time. He's like, great, lose this one. And it's the kind of thing of like, no matter what I say to you, no matter how much I beg, do not give me the key. And then he caves immediately and begs Buster for the key back. And we see that it's one in a series of keys. He's got like a key in a toy box. He's got a key in a cabinet to try and kick his habit, but it's not successful, at least at first. Eventually, Fern has to be the one to crack the whip and tell him and get him on the straight and narrow to finish his report on the Magna Carta. What I also really liked is that by the end of the episode, we do find out how the end of Junior Island, or so it seems, or maybe the end of this season, the end of Junior Island is them discovering a land bridge behind the island. Which
so it's really been Junior Peninsula this whole time.
That's a good one. I like that one. But it's a very, like, it's played within the universe as a very, like, lackluster and insulting ending, which I did find very funny. I don't think Lost was over by the time this aired, but I feel like that was definitely a part. What I also found interesting is that this is done through Brain and Fern are on the phone as Brain finds out that it's like, oh, there was a land bridge on the island all along. And Brain's like, what? He's so insulted. And Fern says to him, well, I hear in the next season they're going to go to a different island. And then Brain is finally disgusted and then kicks the habit. He's like, you know what? Okay, I'm done with Junior Island.
It's almost another show. That era of TV is really funny. That era of network TV where it wasn't quite the prestige TV era, but there was these shows that kind of cross over. Like, I think Lost is still a notch above some other of the contemporaries of the era. For instance, Prison Break.
Yes,
which
I knew you were going to say Prison Break.
They got out of the prison, and it's like, well, what do we do now? And it's like, now they're in another prison.
Now they have to break into a prison.
They have to break into a prison, and then also after that they go to another prison that they have to break.
That's exactly what I thought of. And also I don't exactly have the dates in front of me, but that is what happened on Lost as well, is that famously they had to go back to the island.
Yeah, we got to go back, Kate.
Exactly. I'm not there yet, but I'm interested. I'm interested in how my wife will react to it. She's kind of into it, but also like
she's never seen it before.
No, it never really appealed to her. What's interesting is that I talk a lot about how, I had to wait a week to find out about this, or like I had to wait 3 months to find out what happened after this finale. And she's like, yeah, I wouldn't have kept watching. Like I wouldn't have appreciated that.
The mystery box. She's free of the mystery box's siren song, it seems.
Yeah, she's leading a cleaner life by not adhering to the mystery box. Anyway, we'll see what she thinks as it goes along.
That's actually funny because you could be like, and this they never explain, and this is just like some random stuff they threw in as a red herring. They never explain this stuff.
That's actually my favorite part right now is to like watch this and be like, oh right, well that's not important. The three-toed statue? Forget about it. No, who cares? Yeah, just getting to have those little asides of just like, I've done that with True Blood as well with the free seasons I've got, because, very early on in the show, it's established that the main character, sorry, this is True Blood talk for a second. It's established that the character can read minds except for the main vampire. And my wife, who doesn't mind being spoiled, she has no compunctions about spoiler culture or anything like that. She's like, so why can she read minds? And I'm like, we'll get there. She's like, no, tell me. And I told her, and she's like, really? And it's just like, yeah, that's yep, that's what it is. I won't say it here in case anybody's dying to watch True Blood, but it's pretty silly. Okay, that is the end of the episode. Brain kicks the habit, and basically as soon as he kicks the habit, we're out of there. So let's go back to Arthur's number nightmare. Back to the main character again. Lucas, how did this one strike you?
I really liked Arthur's number nightmare. I thought the episode had a lot of different components happening at the same time. It's an Arthur episode, but it's not quite. It's really interesting. It's an episode we don't really see a lot of, where it's not just an Arthur episode. Like, there's kind of B and C plots happening with Francine and Buster at the same time, but it's also not an ensemble episode. Like, Arthur is definitely the star of the show, and we just get a handful of scenes with the other characters. But I think it strikes the balance perfectly. Like, there's enough going on that the episode has a lot of good forward momentum, and it's kind of interesting throughout. And I thought it was really funny. There was lots of stuff that was making me laugh. Buster being obsessed with there's a part near the end of the episode where Buster is like demanding that everything be 11, where he's like, count them! I demand you count them! Because he needs it to be 11. I thought Francine was because of her competitive nature, she was a good choice to be the person who was really upset about being at the bottom of the list. And like we both talked about earlier, it's always fun to see Arthur get a big head, and the implications of that, and lots of funny Mr. Haney comedy in this one as well. So I thought I really enjoyed the episode.
I did too. I liked it quite a bit too. Now I will say it kind of fizzled. Like the end of it kind of came out of nowhere, and it was one of those ones where I was watching the clock and being like, how are they gonna wrap this up? But I think it also helped that the idea of it was, and I don't say this in a bad way, like inane, in that you knew that it was never going to be like a true ranking system. So it was fun to watch the characters work themselves into a frenzy over this. And you got every end of it. You got Arthur, who thinks he's like the greatest thing, Francine, who's trying to dig herself up from the bottom, and Buster just gets obsessed over basically nothing. I thought the ways that they did that were pretty imaginative, like the Mr. Haney thing. I loved the use of Mr. Haney in this. I think he's a really underutilized character. I think he can be very funny and effective in certain roles, and I think this was actually really good. I just thought this was fun. It was fun to watch, and we, like you said, Lucas, we got a lot of internal reveals into the Arthur universe that I absolutely didn't expect.
That's right. The wiki editors have a ton to chew on from this episode.
You better believe it. I made sure to screenshot Mom's bank card number, so yeah, I'm gonna have a good weekend, boys.
Yeah, that True Blood box set's gonna pay for itself.
Brain gets hooked. Yeah, not as high on this one. I will say I do appreciate the Lost parody. I think that Arthur is underrated as a vehicle for parody, but they often do it quite well, and it is usually pretty timely. The parodies that we've seen, from the famous example of the not Arthur writes a story, but like the episode where they parody like South Park and Beavis and Butthead and all this kind of stuff, that was like of the time. And as Arthur goes along, it's always a good barometer to be like, this is where we are in pop culture. So watching this season, it's like, we're up to Lost now, which was a phenomenon, a TV phenomenon at the time. So I always think that Arthur does a pretty good job. It's not exactly like, edgy or like a real serious, like punching parody or anything, but it is usually, it's fun, especially if you're into that thing, whether it be the Harry Potter parodies that they do every now and then, or this Junior Island. I thought that was fun. The episode, though, I couldn't help but feel like we'd been here before. Like, I think, like, we've done episodes like this, and just with different characters. It made me think of TV Free Week, which I think is very similar to this in the fact that it involves TV, and it also involves the obsession. There's a lot of characters who have gotten obsessed before. I think about the Sue Ellen playing Virtual Goose episode, where she's, I am in control. I'm in control. So we've seen that before, and just the limits that people will go to. Like, a lot of characters get obsessed. And so for Brain to get obsessed, it didn't really add a lot for me. Again, I appreciate the use of Fern. And I'm glad that Fern is being used more, because now we have a barometer of, like, what is good use for Fern. Because beforehand it was like any Fern episode is like, oh, thank God, finally. But now that Fern's more regular, we can be like, okay, this could have been anybody. I understand that Fern is like, she loves mystery, so it makes sense that she would be into Junior Island, but I felt like personality-wise, I didn't really feel it from her in this one. And in my notes, a lot of the notes that I've taken are very much asides to Lost, versus what happens in the episode itself is very basic. And it's also with a character, as we've admitted, Lucas, you and I are not really that fond of. So in the end, we're just doing a style of episode that we've done before with a character that we don't really care to see it with. So other than the Lost parody stuff, which I do appreciate, this one didn't do anything for me.
Yeah, I don't think I feel quite as negative about it, but I definitely don't think that this episode's necessarily a slam dunk, and it's for all the same reasons you mentioned. First and foremost, and I think the biggest problem I have with it, is that it is just a little bit too reminiscent of the Chronicles of Buster. All up to, having, a DVD box set being a plot device, right? In Chronicles of Buster, he becomes obsessed with the DVD features, and it's starting to impede his life, his everyday life. He's missing basketball. It's, I think, impacting school. Similarly, how to Brain's obsession with the fake Lost is impacting school on this one. So that's really where that feeling of been there, done that comes from, is that not only have we seen this kind of plot line based on his obsession, we've seen this plot line based on an obsession based on a very similar piece of media, and so it just feels a little bit too samey. And I agree that, the best parts of this episode is when it's a Lost parody, and those parts are really funny and really creative, but if you remove that, like if you were to make the episode about something else that Brain was obsessed with, the rest really doesn't stand out that much to me. I will say my highlight of the and this part I actually really did find quite funny, my highlight of the non-Lost segments is when Brain is kind of manically trying to lock away the DVD box set, and so he he locks it away, and then he hides the key, and then he puts that key behind a locked door, and then he gives that key to Buster, and he does like werewolf style rules where he's like, no matter what I say to you, don't let me have the key back. But that all kind of is immediately kind of fizzles out because he just grabs it from Buster anyway, so it's all for naught. But I thought that joke was pretty funny. But besides that, yeah, it was just a little bit too samey to other similar episodes. I will say that as much as we give Brain a hard time, I actually don't dislike this episode for the Brain of it all as much as I've disliked other Brain episodes. It's not like he was annoying me. Like, him kind of being a Neil deGrasse Tyson about this Lost parody actually kind of worked for me, because at the end of the day, it's like, as much as he's criticizing it, he's kind of into it the whole time, right? And he's kind of in denial that, especially at the start, he's in denial about how obsessed he is with this show. And so, to me, that's kind of the show signaling, like, yeah, we know that Brain kind of being a Mr. Know-It-All about this stuff kind of sucks, but you can see that he's totally being ingenuine here, and that deep down he like really, really enjoys watching this show because he's so obsessed with it. So I wasn't so much annoyed with Brain this one, but I agree that this episode's just a little bit too much of been there, done that.
Yes, and especially as you and I believe it was Caleb mentioned in our emails, yeah, the Chronicles of Buster, like, just happened. So I was watching this whole thing, I'm just like, we just did this. Granted, it had a little bit of a different focus, but all the same. Anyway, it was still it's definitely interesting to talk about, for sure, so I'm always grateful when we have lots to say about Arthur episodes, whether good or not so good. And thank you for listening to us talk about Arthur, as always, here on Elwood City Limits. Coming up next week, we continue on with our series for patrons, for the kids, a PBS Kids podcast, and it's Lucas's pick. We're going to be talking about Clifford the Big Red Dog, which, as a matter of fact, is in the news lately, given that he just had a feature film make it into the theatries.
I guess we're watching that, eh? Like, me and Will had a conversation off air, and folks, you know how much I love to torture Will by making him watch these video game movies, and to the point where it kind of didn't even get close to being Arthur or kids cartoon tangentially related with Monster Hunter. Well, folks, the chickens have come home to roost, because I think we're going to be watching that Clifford movie. But also, the more I see from that Clifford movie, the more I'm like, wait a minute, there might be something here. Clifford is destroying the public infrastructure of this town in a way that just seems so crazy that I might have to watch it. So we'll stay tuned for our thoughts on the Clifford movie someday.
I will say, maybe this is the time to reveal it, is that we've also gotten a couple of requests about our thoughts on another movie. So, I was talking about on Twitter recently how I went to go see Halloween Kills. Terrible movie. And I felt like my experience at the theater was not all I had built it up to be over quarantine. I was like, that's the number one thing that I can't wait to do. And I went back to the theater, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of over it now. But I think I'm going to go back to the theater a couple of times, because how's this for a shot and chaser? We are going to talk about the Clifford the Big Red Dog movie coming up very soon as an ECL movie review, but it's going to be a double review because I'm going to go to the theaters. I'm going to go see the hottest movie of fall 2021. I'm going to go see Dune, and me and Lucas are going to talk about Dune.
Dune, that's right. Don't use the voice on me, Will, or no need to use the voice, because we're going to be talking about Dune of our own accord. I'm excited. Interesting stuff in that movie.
I mean, I'm gonna drag my butt to the theater, and I don't think I'll be disappointed. I'm very interested to see it. It's just gonna be a really weird double feature of Dune and Clifford the Big Red Dog. Such is my life, a weird double feature. And then coming up on the next episode of Elwood City Limits, you can expect that movie review probably sometime either near the end of the month or into December on Patreon. But coming up in 2 weeks on ECL, we'll be back talking about McFrensky and The Good, the Bad, and the Binky. So 2 title parodies there. We'll have to see exactly what they're talking about. Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate you listening, and we hope to see you either on Patreon or back here on Elwood City Limits. Either way, I appreciate you being here. My name's Will Young, and for Lucas Mancini...
Buster, you have a different lucky number every week.
We'll see you next time.